Right, folk. We will thank you for being quicker back to the mark than I am. But I've also done some good admin while, while we've been having morning tea for the council, so that's good. So we are up to item 2.4 and assembled. Thank you, you guys. I'll let you get straight into it, please. Hi.
Good morning, everyone. This report just is presenting the draft key forecasting assumptions for the 2024-2034 long-term plan. The report is as read. We've also included the Burrell final update report for the cost adjusters, and those feed into the financial assumptions that we provided to you. Happy to take any questions on the non-financial assumptions, and Hayden can answer any questions you've got on the financial
The
ones.
financial ones. Oh, well done. Well set up.
We are a team.
So this is thank you for that, Leslie. This is really important because our thinking about, we're dealing with uncertainty. Okay. I mean, the only thing, I think even Carl puts it as an opinion on the long-term plan, nothing's certain and it won't turn out the way we plan it. But we do have to start thinking about what does the future look like. And a critical foundation of that is what assumptions do we make about the future? And it's really important that we as a risk committee think through that. Goes back to your comment earlier before, Donna, about actually this is an exercise in uncertainty, which is clearly within us. The other thing, of course, is that actually this also then has an impact on how we look at whether we've achieved things or not when it comes to our annual accountability. So it's worth a few minutes because it comes back into the full preparation of the long-term plan that you're dealing with. Are there any particular assumptions, though, Leslie or Hayden, that you'd like to point out to us at this stage? Or will I leave that for members to raise their views? Is there anything you need to say directly on any particular assumption? No? No? I'll open it up for the... No? Okay, let's get it. The comments folk would like to make at this stage, please, on these assumptions. John?
The only thing I'd noted in there is on page 44, it's rates affordability, which has been given a level of uncertainty as low. I think we can definitely say the rates affordability deserves to be a little bit higher than low. Just with some of the numbers we're considering at the moment, what I see happening around the country, I think affordability is a major issue for us to consider. And I'm not sure it should have green. There's lots of other red in there where.
Well, so let's just it's a good point, John. Let's just check what we mean by green. I think what we mean by it, sorry, while you're thinking about it, Hayden, is there is actually a high degree of certainty that affordability is an issue. Okay, you know what I mean? Whereas red means that actually, so if you go to the one above, tourist numbers, I think we're saying we're making a greater leap, not leap of faith, wrong word. We have a greater sense of uncertainty around the numbers. What this is saying to me is that we are highly certain that affordability of our rate bill is a key issue.
Well, then I can accept that. It just reads back the front.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, of course, that's the thing about risk. Terry?
I agree with John. I read it that way, and I looked at that, and there's $60,000 difference in the average wage between here and outside. So that's really a flag to me. Absolutely. To say we have to be really considerate where we put our money and who we're going to charge for it.
Thank you. Just to follow that conversation, that really did come through to me in a big way when I particularly read what were the demographic information and assumptions that we have built into this, Leslie. I assume was it Infometrics or the Waikato study, whatever we use. We've got a lot of science behind us, haven't we?
That's exactly, and we brought the Infometrics information to the council September meeting, and it was looked at quite carefully then.
It's quite sobering, actually. In my view, for perhaps what I probably do go back now, don't I? Pre-pandemic, you start to think about the growth and the challenges that we had as a district. This actually is suggesting quite a possible slowdown. And then when you combine it exactly as you say, I think it's 73 versus 121 average income. You suddenly think, well, so we're dead certain you've got a rates affordability issue, John. There is no deviation and uncertainty. Terry.
The other one I want to raise is around the significant land uses, number 12. And it says in some areas of the district, there is insufficient land zone to meet demand. And then move to the risk. It says rezoning land cannot progress efficiently due to appeals on the changes to the district plan. So that's a bit of a flag that district plan, we've sat there since 2016. Is that right, Donna? When those appeals are coming through still that we're dealing with that. So it's been a long time trying to sort that out. And it's obviously being flagged as an issue going forward.
You want to comment, Leslie? Welcome to.
I agree, yeah, completely. Yes, that we still have appeals on the district plan and those appeals are outside of our control really.
Yeah.
They're still in the Environment Court and some have gone to the High Court and back to the Environment Court.
It's a real issue.
Martin?
Yeah, I just want to sort of play devil's advocate a little bit. So with the age demographics and it says 65 plus age demographic often have fixed incomes and may affect their ability to pay rates. In some ways, that demographic has guaranteed income that is either inflation or cost of living adjusted, which is often above the rate of pay increases that people on wages or salary get. And recently that went up $100 a fortnight for a married couple, $106 a fortnight for a married couple. So I think while being mindful that not everybody in that 65 plus age group has got a whole lot of disposable income, it is a consistent, will always be there source of income. It's not going to be affected by losing jobs or that sort of thing. So I just wanted to put that in there.
So your argument would be what? That there is what's your argument in terms of actually how we have this as an assumption? So I mean, it's quite. I think it's valuable that we have an age assumption. We have to essentially have one because it is starting to give us a sense of. Well, it's a bunch of things, isn't it? Because I mean, an aging demographic also has an impact on the nature of the services, for instance, that we would want to provide in our townships, for instance, is important. So, I mean, income is also an impact to it. How would you want to interpret that here?
Well, I mean, there's as a balance, there's nothing in there saying but people that are in jobs may be affected, their ability to pay may be affected by an economic downturn or loss of jobs or loss of tourism income. So it's just sort of striking that that's in there, but nothing about people that are under 65 and the impact that, that their roads closing and tourism businesses struggling could have.
So I don't disagree. But I'm just trying to say, how do we figure this in here? I mean, what I'm really trying to get here is now's the time to sponsor a discussion, a view. Do these stay the way they are or not? And so, behind your point is what's our assumption about the performance of the economy, and are we likely to be dealing with job losses and changes in the next 10 years? Because if we are, that possibly is important to acknowledge in terms of the assumptions on which we build into our long-term plan strategically. If we think, so I mean, the indicators are from what the Reserve Bank yesterday, actually the economy is going reasonably well. That actually we haven't had a recession, that jobs are broadly holding up. I think we do have something in here about the unemployment rate. Does that feel right to us? Because I mean, I think we have to think about this.
What's the policy for this council? Because I know in Auckland, if you can't pay your rates, you can have it compounds on your property, and you can keep living. And do we have that policy here? Because I think that would make some people who were worried say, well, look, it's on the property and ultimately it's going to go to the kids or something. And at least that's a safeguard for those that, worry about it.
Yeah, through the chair, we do have a rates postponement policy, and that is exactly what Councillor Gottlieb is describing. And that you have to be, I think, over 65, I think, to be able to access that policy.
I'm pretty sure Auckland has a lower age group, but just whether we consider that, because to cover the situation Martin's talking about. But I just think that, yeah, it's a lot of older people get very worried and concerned, and even though they've probably got enough money, they just like to know that they have money to buy presents for grandchildren or things like that. And maybe we should let people know that more, just so they can relax, and it might not be taken up, but at least it's there.
So it's a good point, and I think that's something you have to think about as a second order question, Gary, which is actually when you've pulled your LTP together, quite frankly, you probably have already got a rough cut of the rates bill. What is the percentage increase, which of course is the key thing? That becomes really important. Do we have the system that helps us deliver that? If I go back to Martin's point, I'd just like to look at item number 6 on page 43. There's a sense to which I'm saying, what's your assumption about the economic outlook, Martin? And what we're reflecting here is it's highly uncertain. Correct? I mean, this is what we are saying here, and this has to be specific ultimately for Thames, because actually it's our LTP that we're worried about. And I mean, I see in there, the financial pressures on households, etc. There is, I guess, recognition that the economy has an influence. Hayden and Leslie, how do you think this would play out in terms of our ongoing work through the LTP and what we settle on? How do we factor this into our thinking, is what I'm saying?
Sorry, in terms of the economy and.
Yeah, that's right. We've got it. I mean, these are the assumptions on which we build our long-term plan.
Yeah.
We're saying this is highly uncertain. How do we have that discussion and factor that into our long-term plan thinking in terms of where we finally settle?
From a finance point of view, we I guess we're guided by the likes of Burl and that, who are sort of who've got teams that go out and work out where inflation's moving and whatnot, and the same in the interest rate space. Where are interest rates going? And I guess we have to sort of be guided by them in that space.
I think it's certainly the backdrop of the economy is in everybody's minds as we're making decisions about what projects we can afford, what the rates are looking like. These discussions that we're having as the plan develops, and so I think it's part of the wift and weave of the development of the LTP, really. And we're mindful about affordability. We're mindful about the fact that this district has taken quite a hit over the last year, and it will be a while before we recover. Things just don't bounce back immediately. So particularly, certainly in my team, thinking about that, but also as we develop our levels of service and the kind of the new services that the council's given a new strategic direction, thinking about well-being as well as you think about the demographics that we've got here, and whether the services are meeting the needs of the people that we've got and the changing needs.
Actually, I mean, I agree with all of that. I would like to add to it though. We're talking about the economic outlook. So what are we looking at here? What's our assumption about the wealth of the community? It's about GDP growth. If I go back to the little diagram there. We're making assumptions, which is really important because it's a bit like the discussion that we had originally about the plus 65 and fixed incomes, yada, yada, yada. Actually, we are implicitly assuming in here a level of growth in our community's wealth. whether that being, and I know elsewhere we've perhaps modified an assumption of pre-COVID tourism returning, although we, et cetera, although I've seen all your stuff about Cathedral Coves in the paper. And that there's generally the economy's holding up. That must have a bearing on our thinking when we relate that also to our rates of affordability.
Definitely.
But we're also noting that holding that view has a level of risk, actually high risk to it. Okay, so I'm just trying to tease out the relevance of why this needs to be here, and actually how's this in our thinking. We come to the hard questions. It says to me, if we are more uncertain, what buffer do we have to build into our, for instance, our fund, not the assumed interest rate or whatever, but into our financial strategy, if we think actually there could be a downside? Because this says we should be prepared for a downside because we said it's highly uncertain. So I'm just trying to get into you. What is your thinking? Because this is a really important one, Terry.
I agree totally what you're saying, and it's a great discussion. But we've got three varieties of people in town. We've got the retired people, we've got the people who live on, who bring wealth to the town. If they don't turn up, that has a huge effect on the economic value of the community. And we've got people who work and live in the area. So we've got three different, we've got retired workers, and the incoming, most of our population is incoming from Auckland or Waikato. And if they don't bring the wealth, or they don't decide to come here, it has a huge impact on the economic of the benefits of the community. And that's a real risk.
Well, yes, but I think my point here, Gary, ultimately is, what are we assuming? Because this is all about what we think the future will look like. And if we are confident that the economy is going to rip away, cool. That actually brings something to us about our thinking about our funding, for instance. But if in fact we have an increased uncertainty, it says, as stewards for our community, what does that mean we approach in terms of our services we offer and our funding? Because you have all I'm saying is you have your debates, you've got to come back to these, because actually this is what it is. And if these are our assumptions, if you're having a conversation with the community, it's quite right. It'd be a good question. It'd be a good question from your community. So what do you think? How wealthy do you think we're going to be in 10 years' time? Because it will have some impact. And we can say, well, look, this is what we do. Terry.
So I think one of the biggest decisions we made this year after Gabrielle was our road resilience. And I think if you ask the people out of the district, that one of their biggest issues was road resilience. So I think that was a real confidence move to try and do that, to build confidence.
Yep.
And that was one of our huge steps to try and build that.
We have an assumption, don't we, about weather events, don't we? Sorry, I just want to check that. I thought I read this here. Perhaps I'm reading somebody else's.
No, we have some assumptions about climate change in there and weather events.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you help me there, Leslie? Am I right in saying you're planning on one significant event a year?
Yes.
Thank you. Number 13.
Page 47.
Sorry?
Page 47.
Yes, got there. Thank you. That again is its own important piece. And I must confess that's why I was interested in Dennis's presentation this morning, because it does come back to what's our thinking. I'm not asking you to necessarily respond directly to what he said, but actually about what assumption are we making around climate change? We're saying it's moderate, so that suggests that there's a level of certainty that climate is changing. Is that correct, Leslie?
That's
Sorry,
correct.
I don't know why people are going to hate Leslie, but I should be looking at you.
Yes, we are assuming that climate is changing.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to do so at the rate that, it's, information about climate change is changing every day.
Yeah. I'm with you.
And Dennis's presentation this morning just goes straight to that.
Can I ask, it's a follow on. It's not directly part of the paper, but will climate change, do you think climate change will be part of our consultation document? Is there a climate issue,
There's a
option,
climate
matter that we're
component.
going to be talking about?
Yeah, and the costs of that
Yeah, okay.
to the community.
Cool.
I think it is one of our items for consultation.
But I'm not wanting to
The
say
details,
that's
the detail yet to be worked out, but yes.
I'm encouraged by that, because again, everything I've heard from just my external engagement into the council would suggest I would be surprised if we didn't have some aspect of that in our CD.
Yeah, and the immediacy of the
Yeah.
issue, yeah.
Great. Yes, Lee.
Thank you, Bruce. And apologies for having to step out. And also apologies if some of this might have been covered already. I wonder, Leslie, if you might talk to us about item 20, page 52. And we land on a position around water services reform. Because what we're seeing there, I don't think accurately reflects the current situation. And I'd also reference page, and I know I'm skipping
That's
through a little bit, but page 81, Three Waters Infrastructure, and the Burl forecasts about the LGCI. Burl makes an assumption here that we're basically working on the current legislation, but the certainty that we have is that that is going to be repealed. What that does is it makes the Burl assumptions now redundant. If you put a pin in today, then you could say that's accurate, but in reality, that legislation, we have a very high level of certainty that that legislation will be repealed within 100 days. So two things. First of all, the Burl assumptions, I think, are wrong. And that might have been updated. And if they have, then please let me know. But the Water Services Reform Program, where it says risk high, if the government will not repeal the current legislation, well, I think we can cross that off because that is going to happen. As a consequence, council will be in breach of its obligations under the current legislation to provide for water services until July 2026. So what I'm saying is that where you've got entity B will start to deliver water services in the district by 1st of July 2026. That is not now the case. And that 2026 date had already been changed to 2025 under the agreed Waikato Regional Entity B framework anyway. So I think that whole section needs to be looked at again, and if apologies again if it has already been addressed, but where I'm reading it now, it's not reflecting an accurate picture.
To the chair, if you'll note, we've noted that this particular assumption will be reviewed right up to June 2024. It's a high risk. The risk, the government will not repeal the current legislation is the risk, that everything is changing. But if you look at the assumption, it is assumed that the incoming government will repeal that legislation.
Okay. So
but this will be revised as we move through the process that I think that the government will be initiating very, very shortly.
thank you. So you're comfortable that that is covered in the scope between now and
Absolutely. These assumptions are draft and they will change through until the end of June 2024.
And the LGCI assumption included in that as well?
Yeah, Burl haven't come out yet and say they'll revise them, but I think they are
Okay.
talking about that.
So
Yeah.
we
Based on, I've seen an email where they're in early 2024, they're looking.
Okay. Thank you. That's very reassuring. I appreciate it.
Don needs to speak, but I just think if I read the Burl report right, they have got the water adjusters in there. It's just that they provide us with a combined LGCI adjuster. And quite rightly, they're like us, they've got to go on assumptions, and they did it with water excluded, which is what that's saying. But they also say they separately have provided us with the water adjusters. So in fact, they've hedged their bets, to be honest. They've given, which they need to. They need, just like we have, and I suspect you're going to talk about how we've hedged our bets, Donna.
So through the chair, I was just going to actually say just exactly what you said.
Oh, okay.
Bill numbers. And also what Hayden said about them coming back. And I guess like the risk for this LTP is that that they will come back, and with the waters in there, the LGCI could look quite differently, which will have an impact on our rates. I think that is the risk that we have got going into this long-term plan with the uncertainty around the three waters.
Thank you through the chair. Well, I guess what I'm saying is we have enough information now we're making assumptions here. We have enough information that I think we can make some pretty safe assumptions about what's going to happen.
Yep, and we had a discussion before. I thought that Donald, if I can add to what you've said before, we have the data for the year 3 through 10 already that enables us to essentially meet that assumption that we will have water for 3 years, for 10 years. So there's a bit of resilience in our planning as far as that's concerned. It's not as if we have been going from it goes in 2 years' time and then we've got nothing to do. Just conscious of time, we did probably keep moving. I think we had quite a valuable conversation, but the accountant and me, Hayden, couldn't go too far past page 56. Which is ultimately through the bill and other in the infometric stuff. What is going to be our average cost of funds?
Through the chair, at the moment, it's looking between 5 and 6%. So I think it's about 5.5%.
Yeah. And I think this, all I'm wanting to reflect here, because this comes back to our assumption about what the economy, what's affordable. This comes back to the doability of CapEx and the debt we take on board. What this reflects here is with a medium level of certainty. So that's less than high. It's more certain than highly uncertain, that actually we are going into a period of high cost of funds. So the dollar we take on costs that much more to pay back than it has been in the last 10 years of our LTP. And it's, again, reflecting some of the headwinds. It then feeds back into our rate supportability. It feeds back into our assumptions around the age demographic, yada, yada, yada. I'm just telling you how to do your business, aren't I? Okay, so I just wanted to reflect that that's reasonably important. Again, with the assumption that, the certainty of the assumption that goes with it. Yes, Terry.
My one's just a quick comment around 24, which is the third party funding. Waka Kotahi at that far rate at 51. It's got low rating, which is right. It's most probably not going to drop below that. But I see some of the other councils get a higher rate than us continuously. And why aren't we banging that door for our high weather issues and along the east coast here? I know down in Gisborne, there's someone there still at 71% all the time. And you see the numbers on the side there, 1% movement's $210,000. So any improvement of that, and they're our biggest customer, I suppose, our biggest funding customer, and we've built some good relationships there. We didn't get all the funding we thought we'd get this year out of them, but if that relationship's there to increase that would help help us no end.
Good. What you want to make? So let's make one.
Thank you. The FAR rate is set by formula that's determined by NZTA. And they did consult on it maybe 7 years ago and made some changes to it and incorporated some new factors into their formula. But they are hard numbers. It's not a matter of us going and advocating and getting a higher FAR, because it's set by individual components such as, someone will need to remind me, the value of the district.
That's right.
The level of the deprivation, the length of the roading network, and a bunch of variables like that. And so you put all the numbers in and it spits out 51%. Other parts, like down the east coast, they have a high deprivation rate. They have not many ratepayers and they have a lot of kilometres of roading. So their FAR rate is higher. Yes.
I did wonder actually, Terry, about the adequacy of low existing over the 10 years. I mean, I think this is, I don't think there will be any change between now and 30 June, although I probably would watch this one. This is one, I mean, all assumptions really should have we're going to review them by 30 June. I suspect, and I don't want to reflect political mantra here, but what they are saying is actually, as they open the books, this is a challenging challenge. This could be an area of overall funding. So it's perhaps not so much the FAR rate, but actually what can we claim 51% on that could become more problematic? In other words, I'm hinting there could be, I've got no inside knowledge, by the way, but I suspect this is an area that we'll have to hold carefully and watch as we head down towards You might recall at the last LTP that we had a late change out of Whakakatāi. Significant. I mean, I'm thinking of a different council that was generally a truly eroding county. We were hammered. So we've got to think about that. Yes. Lee.
So I guess the probably the other risk that needs to be factored in is the risk to the footpaths and cycleways funding, which has already been cut twice, the subsidy, and it might be targeted again. So I'm sure that's covered in there somewhere, but that's the one that is more likely to be targeted for further reductions in my assessment.
Right, I'm just conscious of time. This is important, and I think I'm not surprised we've taken more time over this paper than perhaps I had allotted. But you know, it's been useful. Hopefully, it's been useful in terms of the conversation. Can I just ask a question here, Hayden and Leslie? The second part is that we pass a specific motion around the Burl report. Now, Lynn's raised the concern, and I think I'm comfortable that it's covered, that actually they've also provided us with the water. You've said they may well come out. Is there anything particular that would stop us from positively adopting the Burl adjusters? Their industry norm, their standard. Is there anything that would suggest that we shouldn't just agree that they're the right numbers?
Through the chair, nothing that I'm.
Good. No, I just want to make certain there was nothing sort of hidden behind the recommended resolution. Sorry, it's not that I'm suspicious of you, Hayden, but I'm just wanting to reflect, and I want to pass on to. And I mean, I've probably got a personal interest because I, along with a colleague, initiated the Burl adjustment right from 2002. But that's that's well and truly past me now. So we do have a couple of recommendations here. They that we receive. And I think we should be more positive. Actually, I think we should say we receive and adopt the forecasting assumptions. I mean, we need to be positive. This is a marker in the sand as a committee. We're saying they're right, or they're relevant for our planning. And then secondly, we recommend. I'm happy to put that there. Adopt. You haven't adopted your LTP yet. I know, but I'm saying here today, our role as a committee is to, well, I mean, I'm happy to recommend it to council rather than, but actually we need to put a marker in the sand. These stand. We're saying this is our chance as a risk committee to say the settings here are right. Yes, Tom?
Through the chair, I'd like to suggest that you could use the word endorse.
Okay.
The reason why we don't want to adopt is because they are draft assumptions and they're likely to need to be updated during the course of the consultation and leading right up to June.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. So we will adopt, sorry, here we go again. We'll receive and endorse these. I think that's been a very good discussion as to why it's only its endorsement, and that we also will recommend we use the cost justice from Burl. I've moved that. You've seconded. Thank you, Terry. Any discussion on the motion? Being none, I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? It's carried. Thank you very much. This is the easy part, Leslie. It's actually putting it all together, isn't it? And coming up with an acceptable number at the end of it. So thank you for taking us this far on the journey anyway. And
Bruce, can I just raise a point? You mentioned about the speed and time. This is our last meeting of the year. I really think we need to spend as much time on this as we need.
Yep. And
it's a workshop afterwards. Maybe that can flow. Well, if you don't finish it all, we can flow over to the next one we got on the 13th.
Oh, thank you for that, Gary. I think in terms of what our role as a committee has done, we've had a pretty good conversation. I'm comfortable that we've had it's my view, but I mean, unless folk want to suddenly extend the conversation, I think what we've done is set ourselves up for understanding why the assumptions are important. We've had a chance to have a discussion about those which through our work as a committee seem, how shall we say, important to us as we go into your LTP workshops. And we've had a good discussion around what is in terms of the exercise of uncertainty. There's a sense to which I now need to release you to say, well, take this and make use of it when you get to your LTP workshops. rather than, I don't think we're trying to have an LCP workshop now. Okay, can we move on then, please, to the draft annual report? For which, as Donna prefaced, there was also to be a tabled amendment, which I think is also on your your table with you as well. So Hayden, g'day, Bruce. Well, is it November? Is it? Sorry if you care what I say here, but you want to put out a sponsorship form at the same time while you're up here. Okay, hey, Hayden, bring your hands.
Cool. So yeah, in front of you is the draft annual report, which has been quite a big job to pull together. In terms of the main things I'd probably like to highlight in these table changes, the main change was
So we're talking to what you're proposing.
Yes,
in terms of
yeah.
amendment, okay, so you just refer to which parts of it you're looking at, that'd be great.
The main change here was to do with the storm recovery funding that we received. So the business grant recovery fund and the Merrill fund. So just to give some background to that, we were asked to, we had to put it for our books basically. So, but basically for our P&L. So we had to recognise the revenue and the expense. And this adjustment's just around, there was a slight adjustment to how much expense we recognise. So basically what happened there, the money we got from MB, which was just over 9 million, and the money we got into the Merrill was 8.4, and the money we got from the Merrill disaster relief and donations had to go through our books. So we've got $9 million of subsidy and grant revenue, and just about just a little bit less than that of expense that went for our other expenses. So our other expenses line shot up because we had to recognise it, but it was sort of money coming in, money coming out, and it was really it was to do with it's called the principal agent scenario, where we were assessed to be a principal, and that we made decisions around who got the money. So we had to sort of recognise it, but it was quite a process to go through because there's a bit of whether it should be in or should be out. So it was in, and that was the adjustment we agreed with audit.
So can I just help here, Hayden? So in effect, if we're looking at the second page of your table paper,
yep.
Essentially you're saying under subsidies and grants,
yes.
I'm looking at page 56, and I think it's also would be reflected through further stuff. Essentially, we're saying the subsidies and grants number actual 30 million has gone up by approximately $9 million.
It couldn't go up by quite 9 million because we already had it in. It went up by a couple 100,000 because there was a second component around what we should be recognising and what we shouldn't be recognising. Right. So there was a slight adjustment to that number.
Okay. So it's only a minor adjustment.
Minor adjustment,
but it's a minor adjustment that's come out of
the only problem is when you make a minor adjustment to the comprehensive income statement, it adjusts things all over the place.
No, I get that. It goes through the accounts.
So you've got all these. You don't just adjust one number.
And the other adjustment you've made is to the other expenses in the expense side.
Yeah, it was around how much we were allowed to recognise.
Yeah.
And discussing with audit, it was decided that we couldn't recognise the full amount. So there was a slight deferral. Yeah.
And what's that done to our surplus?
It made a slight adjustment to the surplus. I think it was up. It was about 400K difference. I think increased it. So yeah. But just going back to the other expenses, if you were to back out the storm grant stuff that we had to put, the donations and that we passed on, if you were to back that out and you were to back out actual storm damage stuff we had around as a result of Cyclone Gabrielle and Hale, we would have actually been on budget. So that one-off event and then having to recognise that expense, because when you look at the number, you go, holy heck, we're miles over. But there's a whole lot of. If you also look at the subsidy and grant revenue, we're miles over on that as well. So it's finance
It
out.
reflects the
Yeah.
extraordinary nature of the impact of the storm on our finances. But I also hear your point about good management,
Yeah.
that otherwise you would have been absolutely on budget. So
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely, you know what I mean? Thank you. So look, that's first big stuff. There's a few more paper. I mean, obviously, I think you're reflecting on the first page of numbers and on the second page of numbers, you're reflecting the flow through of that adjustment in the accounts. Okay. Probably we can take that as read. Are there other adjustments you need to just be aware of?
There were just some non-financial adjustments, which were just to some of the minor adjustments to the water measures.
So that's the stuff in red that comes in the following pages.
It's in sort of, sorry, 3.1, on this document. There was a bit more written about the weather event. So there was some expansion on the weather event and some adjustments to wording and just really updating the measures. I'll throw it over to Leslie. It's there. That's basically it on the non-financials. There were only minor adjustments. Yeah, so just added a bit more wording around the storm to.
Yep, got that. So the last 3 or 4 pages, we can see the changes have been made both to the general description around the storm events, and then on the tables that follow the back part of the document, we've got some changes to the actual achieved performance. And we can see there it's around faults and complaints for correctly, essentially with our 3 wastewater fault response time measures and our water supply activity fault response time. Okay, with some deletion of some numbers as well. Some wording as well.
Bruce, just can I make a quick point?
Yeah, go for it, buddy.
Really, just quick point around government gave us those grants to give to the people, etc. Administration of those through the council is some of the other areas done a different way of doing, and was it financially costly to us to do them, or was it? I know the benefit we got to the community by doing it through us, but what was the financial impact?
In terms of from the BSG grant, we got 4%. So I think it was about, off the top of my head, about 200.
For administration.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And how did that track?
I didn't track the total cost, but there was an exercise done on that. I don't. Yeah.
I think we might have some help here from Aileen. Donna, would you
So
go
through
first?
the chair, yes, Hayden's right. We did get for those grants, we did get 4% through there. And we have tracked costs. If you take into account, I think like basically from us distributing that money, it wasn't, we were fairly cost neutral with that. The biggest cost for us that we wore as a council was the actual entire storm event, and also dealing with a lot of the recovery work and the stuff since. So we have received money, external funding for recovery. However, when we did an exercise where we looked at the amount of staff time that was taken up with the recovery side of it, and it's still ongoing, it has had a significant cost to council.
My comment would be that in terms of the grants, we definitely got enough money that we were basically paid for administering them. So from a financial perspective, we were no better or no worse off, really. The thing I would say, though, is that it's not all about money. You get the money, but you still haven't got the people. Yeah. So effectively, we ended up paying our people to deliver the money, but our BAU was dropped. And in some areas, we're still catching up on BAU because we did that. But on the other side of it, I would say that it was the right thing to do, because we managed to get all of that money through into our community much faster than an agency more remote from us would have done it. So hand on heart, I can say it's the right thing to do, but it has cost us in terms of delayed BAU. The other thing I'd say is that we've been probably audited twice, 2 times more than I would have liked to have been audited, because as well as our auditors, we've also been audited by MB and by an independent company who were instructed to audit MB's audit, if you like. So we've had, two audits more than I'm comfortable that we've had.
Thank you. Any other comments people like to make? Sorry, Aisha, you've just been introducing your amendments. So I think we can say we understand now the amendments, and by the way, accept the fact that this has been moving up until today. So I'm comfortable with that. I'm conscious also, actually, I should have welcomed Carl to the meeting as well. We should hear from Carl as well, but you may have some more things you want to say generally about your paper and about the annual report itself, for which I should give you that chance.
So overall, I think we had a pretty good year considering the storm damage. I mean, the storm damage did cost us net, I think it was about 3.6 million. So Gabrielle and Hale definitely had a huge effect on us, but overall we actually came out of it relatively okay. I guess this year it'll just be seeing if those effects from the road being closed and whatnot continue to affect us.
Thank you. Bruce, you're up. Finished you, obviously. With my apologies, you've got some part to play. Have you got comments you'd like to make?
No, not really. I don't have any comments per se, but I'm really just here to support Hayden and answer any questions that may come up.
Brilliant.
In
Thank
any
you.
of the areas. So just hanging out here.
Yeah, look, I wonder if at this stage, Carl, if I could invite you to perhaps come forward. I should have invited you right from the start, perhaps beside Martin there. I'd be interested to hear from you then, please, about the audit. And I would hope we're in a position that if we pass the resolutions, we know we're going to be able to adopt the accounts. What date are we aiming to adopt? The 12th. Okay, so the intention is that, assuming we can get this right, when you meet on the 12th, you'll be adopting the audited annual report. Carl, the floor is yours for a few salient comments, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, in short, to answer your question, we're ready for the 12th to adopt. Apologies, the audit took slightly longer than anticipated. We did additional work with the team on the storm funding and recovery, just to make sure that we get that right based on the technical opinions that were received. The other area where we did spend a bit more time was the non-financial performance, and that's resulted in the changes to the information. There was some deficiencies that we'll report in our management report in the information that we audited, and we had to go back once or twice to make sure that the correct numbers are reflected in that regard. But we're happy with what we've got now, so substantially the numbers are correct. There might still be one or two tweaks to the annual report, but nothing significant before it's adopted.
Right, so thank you for that. So that's giving us a sense then of what we've got here. If we combine that with the sense of what's in the memo, we've got a set that we're comfortable with, Hayden, at least in terms of management recommendation. We've got a sense here that, sorry, you're not Hayden, you're Carl, that actually these numbers have stopped moving. There may be an editorial change here or there, but in effect, if we're prepared to adopt this, you're going to give us an opinion. So it gets me to the other two things that are of interest to me. Len and Aileen will have to sign a letter of representation. And I wonder if you could just speak to that as to any particular representations you'll be asking us to sign this year that would be outside the normal.
Thank you, Chair. I think the additional representation that we've included this year is just to talk about the storm recovery response, is to ensure or to provide assurance to the auditors that you've appropriately assessed the impact of the storm on your assets, that you've appropriately made disclosures on your financial and non-financial impact in the annual report.
Right, I can expect that. Bruce, that really comes into your area here. I mean, you're obviously comfortable that we are aware of the impact of the storm in terms of our own asset base. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, no, we're comfortable. Obviously, we've done a lot of work this year. Yeah, and there's a lot of work still to be done, but yeah, we're comfortable.
I mean, the critical thing there is actually should it affect in any way our financial statements and the value at which we reflect assets, but we're comfortable that we've dealt with that as far as that's concerned. And in terms of the non-financial stuff, Hayden, or is that probably Leslie, I'm probably looking at, we're comfortable again that we're reflecting. I mean, we obviously have had some amendments sitting here that we've adequately reflected the impact of the storm as far as that's concerned. Great. Good. So the letter of rep, by the way, sorry, I should be careful. I just assume everybody knows what it is. It's a standard letter that we have to give to Carl, that we've provided him with all the information. I do want to come back to one thing in that letter, which is that we have to also assert it's a going concern, and I'll just come back to that one at the end. What is the opinion you're going to give us, buddy?
Thank you, Chair. The opinion is a unqualified opinion with an emphasis on of matter to show out the uncertainty of the Three Waters or the Three Waters reform legislation.
So the good news there is that you are comfortable. Everything we've said in here is fairly reflects our performance and our position. And so our report in the old parlance, or it's even now, is unqualified. You're not modifying it in any way. That is a good position. I would note, and I think you've seen it here, that we do actually self-disclose that obviously we have a legislative compliance breach and that we're adopting post 31 October. But for good reason, quite some time ago, we all agreed that would need to occur. So that is fine from my perspective. So members, our role really is, Carl.
Sorry, if I may just add one more thing. I think the disclosure in the non-financial information that's presented in the addendum and the disclosure note that's specifically made of the financial statements really clearly sets out what the impacts of the storm was on the community, on the performance, and on the financial side. So I think that's a really clear reflection from management on what that has done.
Thanks, Carl. And I think that actually also reflects some of the conversation you're taking us to, Thierry. You start looking at the numbers. What does it really mean? And I think that's actually really important. So members, our role ultimately is to recommend that on the 12th, when you convene as full council, that the letter of representation is signed. We really are confirming, but actually that Len and Aileen also signed the statement of compliance. You adopt the annual report and indeed receive the opinion knowing what it's going to be. So before we look at those resolutions, any comment, questions you would like to have on the annual report we have in front of us? Good. I don't want any changes. Okay. I didn't say that. No, seriously, is there any comment folk would like to make as far as the annual report is concerned? I'd like to make one comment, please, which I just, at the risk of a wee bit of time, just want to take you through. The last paragraph in the letter of rep basically is titled going concern. And that's actually, we as a council have to assert to the auditor, Carl, that actually we believe we can pay our bills the next 12 months. Now, we don't have any trouble with that, quite frankly. We've not got a problem. But I do think it's interesting just to think about our settings, particularly as we go into the LTP. So I just want to look at a couple of pages, which is my way of interpreting the local authority sets of financial statements. Can I refer you to Daisy? It hasn't got the actual, it has. It's 127, I think. It's page 13 of the actual draft annual report. It's got a series of bars. It's this one here. These are the standard or the mandatory disclosures that we're required to have. I'd like to just draw your attention to it. We can see here that, by the way, the colours on these charts are actually mandatory colours, by the way. They must be this green and they must be this orange. This shows you the reach of the regulations. But if it's orange, it says that we haven't achieved our goal. So it says we haven't balanced our budget. And the test for balancing our budget is that we have sufficient operating revenues to pay for our operating expenses. There's a calculation behind this, but what it means is that actually you should have enough money coming in to pay for today's groceries. It's saying that we are short by 6%. Okay, now we can debate the rights and wrongs of the particular way it's measured, but actually it's a reasonable assessment. The other thing that is really important here is the measure below it, which is the essential services benchmark. Now, what that is doing is matching again with a calculation. What is our spend on capital renewable relative to depreciation? Bear in mind that if we are meeting, you know, I guess some basic core financial management, we'll reinvest generally over time each year the same amount as we depreciate. So that's why that calculation's there. And again, there's good reason, by the way. I'm sitting up there in it. We haven't achieved that. And I know elsewhere we've discussed before, and it's also reflected even in the assumptions around CapEx delivery versus where we budget to be. Rightio? So those are important because I raise them not because actually it affects the proposal in terms of the opinions, but actually it's relevant for saying this document bases you now in terms of your LTP considerations. I just want to reflect on one other thing here. If anybody is interested in the numbers, if you go to page, and sorry, just keeps it's the comprehensive report. I can't actually. It's 171, I think, of our agenda. It's page 57 of the actual draft opinion. It's 156 previous page. It's the statement of comprehensive revenue and expenditure. I just actually note, can you guys find it? Yeah. Brilliant. I want to reflect another way I look at this. Look at the depreciation line, depreciation and amortization and expense. You will see that it comes to $33 million or thereabouts. Okay, everybody there? So let's just remember, depreciation is the cost of the use of the asset. So we have incurred, it's not a check you write out, okay, but we have incurred an expense of $33 million in using the roads, the wastewater plants, all that sort of drama, playgrounds, you name it. It's cost us that in any 1 year to use that asset. That's what depreciation is saying. But the critical thing is, do we, and this comes back to both balanced budget and essential services, how do we look at that? Well, I look at it in a couple of ways, and if you flick the page with a statement of cash flows, which is over the page, you'll notice two things here. In the top section, we have cash flows from operating activities. So this is just our everyday revenue and expenditure in cash terms. I shouldn't use revenue and expenditure, should I, Carl? I'm mixing our receipts. It's what flows through our bank account. And you will see under the actual column, net cash flows from operating activities is $33 million. That's actually quite a good number because it's not an exact science, but it approximates our depreciation. So that is helpful. What I also look for on this page is actually, if you go into the next section, how much are we reinvesting in our assets? Now, there is an interesting line. We plan to invest $52 million. And I say that sounds pejorative, we only achieved 37 million. Rightio? I mean, that's the CapEx doability thing that you're going to have to talk about in terms of your LTP. But you compare 37 with depreciation, you come up with 30, which is 33. It does say, and this is where I have to be careful about the first page I showed you, that we're not too far off the mark. This looks about right. We are reinvesting in our assets at roughly the right rate this year. Also, I've got to say it's over time. What it does say to me is that it's finally balanced. And that's the challenge. It's finally balanced. Okay. If we were, you know, the financial discipline on us is to keep up our revenue. Okay. And to keep investing in our asset base. Okay. Which is reflected to us by that value of depreciation. but we see in here the outturn of what we actually do and achieve during the course of the year. Rightio. So it becomes really important we keep our eye on those, and they become the key things you've got to look at in terms of your LTP. Kieran?
I'm just agreeing with you totally, but the revaluation of assets have gone up and they're
Yep.
still going to keep going up. But
Yeah.
they seem to be increasing more so now than in the past years. So sometimes buying great assets cost us money.
Absolutely, yeah. There's an irony here, isn't it? We face a cost of living adjustment, and yet the council gets more wealthy. And that's because of the way in which we correctly value our asset base, which is depreciated replacement costs. It's giving us our best sense of what is the cost of the use of the asset. Quite frankly, it's never going to be enough. And I think that's the problem, is that $33 million sounds like, so if I invest next year $33 million, I'll be able to replace and renew my assets. The answer is inflation is not allowing you to do that. That's why I say we're finally balanced. The numbers aren't out of kilter. We're in a reasonable position, but these numbers suggest that we've got to look at our revenue line and keep it up, and do the mahi in terms of our reinvestment in our asset base. Okay, so it's good stuff. It's actually where we take it. That's moving us slightly on from the immediate business that's in front of us.
Bruce, can I just say that's a really good lecture we've just had.
Ah, yeah,
I
that's
mean,
right.
just
Lecture,
in
rant,
helping us identify key issues there. Thank you very much.
And I think that, and I mean, I'd just leave it at there. I mean, I have taken more time than probably I should have, but I just want to reflect, perhaps as your risk chair, I'm looking at what is the financial risk we face. Well, rather, it's not the risks we face, but actually, what is this telling us that we need to think about in terms of our LTP discussion? Because I go back to my point, you now have an externally verified base on which to build your LTP. That doesn't mean to say you can only now start doing your LTP work, but in the same way that Leslie's just taken us through our assumptions, which need to be reviewed continuously to 30 June, here goes one piece of solid information we can actually rely on now, which is helpful. It's just getting those data points in place which give us better confidence. Okay, there's a lot more in here. I mean, we could talk about your debt and treasury position, yada, yada, yada. Well, we're going to anyway, because that comes up in the later papers. So I think it's actually important unless there are other questions folk would like to raise, I think it's important we keep moving the business on, and we look at the resolutions, please. So the first one, I'm on page 113 of our agenda. The first one is we received the draft report. Thank you, both of you guys. And we recommend to council that they adopt the annual report for the year ended 30 June. I must confess, and I'm not going to suggest that we expand that, but I want to reflect that what we are doing here is that we are saying two other things. We're saying for Len and for Aileen that we are comfortable they sign the statement of compliance. I should actually have got that out of the where is it in the accounts? Well, I think I should just be a wee bit pedantic here and make you see that. Whereabouts is it, guys? Where is the statement of compliance? I read it before. I haven't marked it in my let's see it actually. I don't know where it is. Yes, it is. Page 55 of it. Gonna have to change, isn't it? Can't be the way it is. Actually, we're not meeting. We haven't complied with the law because we've gone past the balance date.
There has been disclosure made of that in the notes, Chair.
You happy and it doesn't have to come under the statement of compliance?
I think as long as it's self-disclosed in the financial statements, we're okay.
Yeah, we might just check that one out this morning. Okay, so the statement of compliance is those two short paragraphs, but actually, I want to reflect it is a somber signing.
Sorry, what was your concern, Bruce?
It says under compliance, Thames Coromandel hereby confirms that all statutory requirements in relation to the annual report have been complied with, and I'm saying we haven't because we adopting it late.
Because of those amendments.
We're adopting it late. No, we're adopting
Okay.
we should have done this by law by 31 October. I think we just, it could be a minor change. I think we'd look at it, mate. I would be pretty confident that elsewhere we should actually dispose, except for the adoption of the accounts by 31 October. And then we're saying we're taking responsibility for what's inside the report. So in saying we recommend adoption of the annual report, we're actually saying to Glenn and Aileen, you have our support to sign the statement of compliance. Goes back to John, even our conversation before, governors are taking ownership of this document. Okay, that's
So therefore procedurally, them signing it should happen after the risk and assurance meeting rather than before the risk and assurance.
Yeah, that's, yes. It should happen on the day. It should happen on the 12th. It needs to be dated the 12th because that's actually when the accounts stop moving. Okay, I haven't gone through the contingency note or the provisions note, but actually there is arguably a chance that some matter or event will occur between now and the 12th, which we need to acknowledge. Okay, even his opinions changed from what it was last week because of the events around the Three Waters reform. The other thing that we're doing in adopting this is actually the letter of rep, and I wonder, it may have been circulated, I might have got to my emails, but I would be keen that is actually circulated to the committee. But essentially, as I said, it's saying we've provided to Carl all the information, all the data he needs, everything he needs to do it. And as I've gone through it, we're happy with our financial performance and we are good to go for another 12 months. So we're saying to Len and to Aileen, please sign that as well. And we have heard from Carl, it would be good to have your draft opinion circulated as well as soon as possible, that actually we know if we sign that, he's going to give us a unqualified audit opinion, other than noting that Three Waters reform is making it hard to know what view to take on our asset base, which is exactly where we're in. Is that, I've been a bit pedantic, but is that clear to everybody? Yeah. Sweet. Okay, so we're going to receive and we're going to recommend. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Peter. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Terry. Okay, in that case, any discussion on the motion? Being none, I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Hayden. That's, oh, now, sorry. It is actually incumbent upon me. I think it's actually as chair, always a time when I should be reflecting my appreciation to everybody in the room that's got us here. But Brian, I wondered, was there anything that you wanted to say? Yes? No?
Sure, I'll jump in. It's been a real team effort. And I just want to, thank the team, and in particular Christine, who's sitting next to me. She's jumped in. I think Carl will endorse that, and been a real firefighter for areas outside of her expertise, but got the right people to do the right things in the right time. So I think thank you very much from all of us.
Thank you, and I do want to express that. I've been in the background. Carl's kept me informed where he's going from his side, but Aileen and the team have informed me a lot, and Donna from their side. And I'm worried for our staff. Actually, it is difficult, and it goes back to the point you made, Hayden. We've dealt with the storm event, but what's piled up behind us is our BAU, and in a sense, our annual report is just BAU. And the fact that actually we have to deal with the issue that we have gone past the balance date. I'm not actually worried about the statutory compliance. I'm worried about the impact on staff, because actually tomorrow's got to be full steam on the LTP. So I just want to express with that sort of cautionary, or what is the silver line on the cloud, Hayden, my deep appreciation to you and Donna and your team under some pretty trying circumstances to get this thing out the door. And the fact that we're a bit late, but we're only a month late is great news. And I think in terms of the year that we've had, Aileen, that's a pretty darn good effort. So I'm deeply grateful as far as that's concerned, and would just, as the external chair, like to pass on my vote of thanks to you folk for the hard yards, Donna, that you've all done with your team. It's great to be there. It's great. Thank you for that, and Brian, thank you too for your words. I know that one of the impacts of the audit is that it's now starting to much more comprehensively affect all staff, and I suspect there's been some challenges of getting the information there, and I appreciate that as well.
Brian,
Thank
can I ask you a question? Are you shaving your moustache off tomorrow?
I can't wait.
Okay, thank you for that time. I would like to keep us moving, please. I'm just conscious of your meeting this afternoon, and that's great. Thank you, Carl. Bruce, thanks. So we've got some standard reports. We just need to, oh, sorry. Yes, thank you, Donna. I'm not doing things right yet again. I have just going to suggest that without going back and removing the motion, in terms of the annual report, we need to note we received the draft annual report and indeed the amended document, please. We'll add that to the agenda. We'll add that. I don't think there's going to be any problem with the motion. Sorry that I am so unofficial here, Donna, but you'll send me to correctional school somewhere down the track. Okay, can we deal with the Treasury report, please? Hayden.
Cool. Through the chair, I'll take the report as read. We've basically got the same position as we had in August, debt position, and yeah, things haven't changed as such since August in terms of overall debt levels, etc.
Right. Can I just check? I mean, key thing about the Treasury report is are we inside our sort of core? They're not really our banking covenants, but they are the covenants that our lenders, our lender wants us to live within. Can you just point out the key numbers, please?
Yeah. So let's check what pages it is on. So I think it's 248 where the sort of measures go. So like interest rate risks, we're compliant. Liquidity risk, funding risk, investments all got ticks. Yeah, we're basically compliant across all of our treasury measures. Yeah, so we've been doing, we're constantly sort of looking at it. It's obviously at the moment we've got a really, really good hedge book. So we did an exercise a few years ago where we did a blend and extend, and we're able to take advantage of some pretty good interest rates when they were historically low. And that's meant that we've basically, instead of us paying the banks for those swaps, they're paying us. So we're on the right side of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's basically what it's done is it's offset some of that interest cost basically that we would be receiving by having those hedges in place. So we're quite lucky in that sense. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Any questions, comments, Hayden? I don't think there are any. It's good to know that we're in the right side of the ledger. Can I move to the recommendation, please, that we receive a Treasury report? All those, I'm going to move that. Do I have a second? You see, I'm trying to hurry myself up here. Thanks, John. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. Hayden, a quick trot through your debtors report, please.
Through the chair, I'll take the report as read. We're basically we're in a good position with debtors. We've still got 2 instalments to go. So once those 2 instalments, well, we're obviously doing all the normal practices, chasing arrears and whatnot, working with our external agencies, working with Waikato Regional, but yeah, we until we really have those next 2 instalments come off, that'll tell us sort of, how much, if we have an issue, a major issue of arrears. But we are following up with people, and we're looking to do arrangements to pay and stuff like that. So we're just trying to really work with ratepayers. Really, it's a challenging time, and we've got a good team in there, and yeah, that's pretty much BAU at the moment.
A couple of things that strike my mind here is actually we've got some good data points here, which shows that the combination of your work, look at that diagram where you got the historically outstanding rate debtor balances, and it does reflect that actually we are getting rates in the door. I just wonder, in light of Gary's comment earlier around assumptions, whether and you say, of course, you get next instalments through. I wonder whether perhaps halfway through next year, which is going to be when your 2 instalments are through, whether perhaps your report could indicate quantum, it's obviously got to be nice, but quantum and numbers of people that are on some form of, rates payment process. Just so that Gary would give us a sense of actually are people within the community activating it? And, what does it look like? Perhaps just a sense of where that's at. Doesn't need to be big, but I just think it would be useful probably when we get to our May, June meeting, where we stand as far as that's concerned. That'd be great, Hayden. Questions, comments, Hayden? There being none, I'd like to go to the motion then, please, which is that we receive the report. So the move in a second, please. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Rika. Appreciate that. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. We're shooting hot now. Okay. Page 255, we've got the resolution to exclude the public for the reasons stated. They all look pretty darn right for me. Do I have a mover, please, I'll move that we go into it. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Rika. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. Minutes, I'll move from the chair that they are indeed true and correct.